So welcome to Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive, aka an animal communicator. This right here, those of you who are listening and not watching, this is an animal. His name is Pearl, and he is my 23-year-old soul bird sidekick, and he never misses an episode. And luckily, he's loud. So those of you who are trying to check in his attendance, you got it. So today we are talking, as usual, about all things animal communication. All phases of animal communication, from the moment we start dreaming about adding an animal to our family to the moment when that animal may be ready to pass out of their body. And this is one of the most transformative and difficult topics to tackle as a loving human, as a pet parent. It's also one of the most potentially transformative in the ongoing relationship that we have with our animals. And so I've invited Maribeth Decker from Sacred Grove to come back today. This is her second visit to Let's Talk to Animals. So excited to have her. There's some very specific reasons why I invited her back. And so if you haven't heard her first podcast, you can find it in the archives, either on the animallovelanguages.com website under podcast, or on your favorite streaming service, or out on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube. And you can learn more about Maribeth's personal story, how she came to be an animal communicator, what that process looked like and felt like, how she works with people. So kind of catch yourself up and that's why I wanted to kind of make that clear, because we're departing a little bit from our normal format. Maribeth, first of all, let me slow down, stop talking, and say welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here and do this and with you and Pearl.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping he's going to slide into afternoon siesta mode here. That's about where we are timing wise, as far as sometimes I actually like strategically try to plan the podcast when I think he might be a little less verbal, so to speak. But Maribeth has many years of experience working as an animal intuitive and I would say a pet death doula of sorts. Would you say that could possibly be accurate?
Yes,
I do too. And also a light worker, an energy healer for pets and people. And you have a new book out that's coming out right now when we're because these are pre-recorded. We capture it and then have time to schedule it and then archive it. So you can always come back and listen as many times as you like. But at the date of this recording, it's coming out in, I believe, 7 days. Is that correct?
That's it. I'm looking at the calendar.
Right.
7 days, April 28th. Yep. Well,
28.
Yes.
So by the time now that you're listening to this or watching this podcast, you will be able to pick it up on Amazon. You can find it from sacredgrove.com, Maribeth's website, or you can head directly to Amazon and type in Peace and Passing. And this is the second edition. You also have a program called PET, which I love. It stands for Peaceful Endings and Transitions. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just helped. Oh my goodness, a couple and their dog, who it was a sudden sort of, the dog is done, and the husband wanted to let the dog know that. They had brought him in to the vets thinking there was something fixable, and it wasn't. Okay, so the dog's going in with the idea that, oh yeah, it's that usual thing we don't love. I'll be home. And it turns out that euthanasia was going to be the next step for the dog. So we were able to let the family talk to the dog, the humans and the dog talk, and let this dog know what was going on and how much better he's going to feel, and that his body was just not supporting him anymore. And a lot of times I do the transition remotely by myself, but in this case, I was able to be there through texts. It's not perfect, but he had his pup at the vet's, and he would say, okay, this is happening. And I'd say, I'm feeling like he's already left his body. Just sending energy all the way through. We came up with who was going to greet him, so that that he knew everything was going to be okay. And so, I get to talk to the human afterwards, and know that through the grief, there's some feeling of, I did this right, and I made it as best as I could for myself and my pup. And that is so good.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it feels like I could just feel the energy of just the spaciousness that's opened up around our conversation as we, you're able to bring it into, put it into words so that we can kind of walk along with you and this dog and his family. But it feels so reverent is the word that's coming up to me, and mystical, and and so at odds with, and I think you reference this in your book as well, because out there in the world, that outside this beautiful bubble that we're holding space for here in our conversation, out there in the greater world, noisy, busy, people at all stages of life and evolution and personal growth. It's just, I don't think there's a pet parent or a human who cares about animals anywhere on this planet who hasn't at some point bumped into that statement that we all hate, which is, well, it's just an animal. Like, just get over it. Like, go get another one. Like, what's the big deal? And how much that holds us back from allowing us to have the experience with our own beloved that we're here to have. How much the intrusive, that pushing in of the world and the busyness and the self-importance and the pressure of the unknowns and the fear that causes takes away from the whole reason that we're here, the whole reason we signed up to connect with this animal in the first place, the whole reason that we decided that our life wouldn't feel full and as meaningful as it could without. So do you see a lot of that when people come to you and I mean, how do people even realize that this is that what you just described to us is available? Because it's not out there. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, it's just not even something that would come up,
Shannon, you're so right. I think it's starting to wake people up. Maybe because of the things that we're doing. I would like to think that, but we who love our animals, and I like to say as much as or more than the people in our lives, and that's talking to the kind of a relationship we can have with our animals. We have been always feeling this at the end of their lives. And we just haven't been given permission. I think things are changing, Shannon. I think that there's a lot more of us who, men, women, kids, will admit that being is part of the family, where generations ago that being was outside with the job, and I'm thinking royalty had the pets, but the rest of the normal folks, you didn't do that stuff.
And if we did have animals, they were our work partners.
They were the work. Yeah, that's what they were.
Yeah, it wasn't about.
There was still a beautiful Yeah, there was.
It was It was like more of a mutually beneficial synergy versus this ability to have this deep inside connection and be responsible. I mean, the animals would be generally rather independent, coming and going when it was their, I mean, it's so different now, that the old adage about the dog or the cat going off to be alone to die. I mean, that's not even really possible in most cases for the modern pet, if you will. And nor would the animal necessarily prefer that, so it's just, oh my goodness, it's like
most of it, you're right. Most
so
of
many
them do not. I mean, there
possibilities
are
that
always
never
been-
existed.
Yeah. So many possibilities.
That never
Yeah.
existed before, that just weren't, and the and to have the trust of an animal that is actually that is inviting us to participate in their process, and yet we don't even know that invitation is on the table. And that's what I find so impactful about your work, that's giving me goosebumps right now, is that here we have an animal, like, let's say my precious Pearl, or any one of the animals that you who are listening or watching right now are thinking about. And this animal, just understand that this animal is inviting you to be a part of their life in every respect, every day.
Right.
And so that was another question that I had for you. Of course, before this started, I warned you that I was going to read all these long, convoluted questions. And now that I am talking to you, it's feeling a lot more organic, which I'm sure you're very relieved about. But it feels like at some point, the work that we do as animal intuitives really becomes very human focused, because there's so much fearfulness and even maybe denial of our own death. And we don't even like to talk about our own death or plan for our human loved one's death. And we don't know. It's like, okay, that invitation is on the table. Our pet is saying, you can walk with me right up to the gate. I want you there. We don't know what that means. We don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so, and I feel like that's what your book and that's what your Perfect Endings and Transitions program is about. And so, how would you talk to a pet parent who is just like, oh my God, I'm just so overwhelmed by the thought they could even pass, let alone let's start preparing. I've even run across clients who would say, well, if I talk about it, if I think about it, will that make it happen faster? It's like they think somehow it's going to be this negative, this reverse law of attraction, that they're going to Maribeth, tell us how to navigate this.
Well, the first thing that came through, Shannon, this is great stuff. The first thing that came through to me, and it was actually after I finished the book, was I realized that the grieving process doesn't start when we set the date for the animal to be euthanized. It actually starts the first time we notice they're getting old and they can't do what they used to do. And I'm getting teary-eyed because I got one for a couple that are there. That's where, so we're looking at peace and passing. We humans start dealing with that as soon as, I'm talking to whoever's listening. Do you remember the first time you got that diagnosis, or you saw them unable to do something that was like the biggest pleasure in life? That's where it starts. And that's where my book is fuller and more detailed about how to navigate that and still be there with them from the time you realize they're not going to be on the planet forever. We already knew it intellectually.
Yeah.
But not emotionally until that happens.
Yeah. And that's a whole different experience, to know something and to feel something. Well, now we're tiptoeing into the territory of how we do what we do, aren't we? Because it's a world of difference, and helping the human tiptoe into that place where the animal is already swimming. They are fully there in that feeling side, that feeling state. And the human is just we don't even want to go into our minds about death, because I mean, and in a way, it's kind of an acknowledgement of our power. Like, okay, I think I'm so powerful that if I think about my pet's death, they're actually going to die sooner. On the other hand, it's like, well, if I don't think about it, then maybe it will never happen. And it's like, okay, no, we really need to acknowledge the, enormous purple elephant in the middle of our relationship with our
Absolutely. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that I've figured it out and I'm Mary Poppins like from the 60s, hopping through the later stages of my dog's life. No.
No.
But okay, so I'm going to do one of the funny things that I keep saying to myself. I am a Monty Python fan from way back, and they have it's a terrible scenario that you would snicker at if you have a bad sense of humor. So I won't go there, but the phrase that sticks with me is, "I'm not dead yet." And so with that phrase, it helps me, and I hope maybe it will help others to say, well, wait a second, in the here and now, they aren't dead yet. I want to be here with them. The other thing is, they don't actually have the intellectual knowledge of whatever long description of their problem is. They aren't sitting with those words in their brain. They are actually dealing with what is in their body and in their minds. And so I think what I'm saying is, let's remember that they're still around and bring joy and mindfulness to what they're experiencing as much as we can, rather than focusing on only what we're experiencing, which is the pain of loss coming at one point. Sometime.
Yeah. It's bringing to mind the experience I had when this was before I realized I could talk to animals. And so I was, just busy hiring animal communicators. And my mother's soul dog, JP Morgan, was on his very, very quick descent into his end of life process. And I convinced my mom and dad to hire an animal communicator I had worked with to ask JP what his last wishes were. And he was very, he was very specific, and it really helped shape his end of life grand finale, if you will, how he wanted to go around the neighborhood and say goodbye to everybody that he cared about. And they were able to make that happen. They literally went door to door, knocking on all of his friends' doors and having the humans. And he didn't really love dogs that much. He liked people a lot. And so the humans would come out and pat him, and he loved to be patted. And he had a really specific request. He loved to eat. So he wanted to have a luscious, delicious meal. And a friend of my mom's made only him, a full rack of ribs, mashed potatoes, and gravy. And he ate it. I'm not even kidding you, right? We can get a little crazy with these. And he was really specific. He was like, I don't want any more surgery. He had a lot of, problems with he had Cushing's, and not to go into too much the medical stuff, but he was like, if I could stay around and I could eat longer and get patted, like I would love that, but I don't want any more invasive stuff. And it just became really clear when we add the animal to the conversation. And even though there were tears that day, we went from being like stark raving hysterical, like the three of us were just like crying and like, fighting with each other about what to do. And half an hour later, after talking with the animal communicator and hearing from JP directly, we were smiling. We were actually laughing with each other. We were already creating memories, feeling connected, feeling plugged in to this process. in meaningful ways, feeling like we could be a blessing to JP and not missing out on the rest of the time we had with him, which I feel like is what you're pinpointing. Understanding that help is available there. Maybe you are dealing with people in your immediate family or your sphere of influence, so they speak, or your friends who just don't get it. Well, fine, then don't go to them for support. You have support. Go where you will find the support that you need, because it's available. And I think that that's really the spirit of why I wanted you to come back around this impactful moment and share your book and share the work that you do with your transition program, and that amazing story about being able to help the animal. I mean, that's like a gift. That's a huge thing that people don't realize. There's actually a possibility of you being able to help that animal's spirit right during the period, at the most mystical, sacred moment. We can help you if you're listening today, and that is the mission of this work that I'm doing through the podcast. We're both donating our time. We're here, we're sharing, we're bearing our hearts, because we know what it feels like to be alone, and we know what the difference can make when we are being able to be supported and being able to ask for and receive the love and the understanding. People that will come around you, people that will come alongside you, people that will say, not only do I get it, but you don't, there's nothing to get. Love is love.
Love is love.
Let's make this miraculous. And let's talk about the next step, because I feel like, and this is one of the gifts of your work in your book, and the fact that it's now revised and expanded, because we're always learning new things. We're always gaining access to, it's like we take one step and we think, okay, I'm here. And it's like, no, then we see there's another step, right? And it's like, let's talk about that next step, because this mindset, again, where we're like, okay, then they're going to die, and then they're going to be dead. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my human clients have told me, I swear, in fact, even my parents said, we could hear him barking in the middle of the night, but that's not possible, of course, because he's dead. And it's like, so, it's like that human is still going to need support after your pet's body dies, which I feel like is an important distinction to make. Let's talk about that. Like, how can we, because animal communicators, we're still here and we can still help you stay connected. So could you share a little bit about that and how that works?
Yeah. First off, Shannon, that's perfect, because from my experience, and I know it's from yours as well, love never dies. There is a theory out there that I don't prescribe to, I don't agree with, that says animals' spirits dissipate and they go back to the Borg, and they're part of the energy. Well, when I saw my dog Timmy, who had passed, sitting in my dining room, a full body apparition, I ain't crazy, folks. He was still around. He was still his lovely one ear up, one ear down self, and he did not dissipate into nothing. Okay, but bodies dying does not mean that the essence, the soul, the character dissipates. They are still around, and there is a love connection that I think is eternal, if you want it to be. As long as you just saying, yeah, we're always going to be connected. I'm patting my heart. We're going to be connected forever. I believe that our animals are saying the same thing. Yeah. Let me stop there and let's just make sure I'm still on the same track. I feel so strongly about this. And so animal communicators, most of us, I believe, are comfortable with connecting with animals after they passed. I mean, I talked to two sisters earlier this week, and they each had a bunny who had passed, one recently and one a year ago, and we were checked in on them and received information, and they were able to have a conversation, helping them release the sadness and guilt. There usually is there's something about transitions that we humans think we messed up with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I haven't met an animal yet who's holding a grudge in the afterlife. So
I haven't either. And it really feels like the guilt that we bear stems from how we treat and view death as human animals in this very high tech, very cutting edge, very modern, very mental age as a problem to be fixed. And it's like, well, if I didn't at least extend the life, if I didn't fix it, if I didn't make it not happen, if I didn't, find some miracle cure, it's like, in my experience, it's not like an animal comes in with, maybe you've had experiences where they do, but it's not like I've had people come in, with like those of you who are watching would see me holding up a piece of paper with lots of writing on it. It's like, okay, and on, April 29th at 2 p.m., this is going to happen. And then on, May 3rd at 4 p.m., I'm going to die, and I'm going to die of this thing, and it's going to happen in that. That's not been my experience. However, there is kind of a general outline, a flow, if you will. A lot of room for creativity, a lot of room for experiences on multiple levels, but there is kind of a general framework. It's like, the animal is going to go around a certain period of time. I would think more here in years, months or years versus, weeks or days. And how it happens, maybe it's a gray area, but it's like, you couldn't fix this if you tried, and most of us tried really, really hard. And it's like, but that animal has signed up to have an experience that includes a continuation of their life, whether they're embodied or in spirit. It's like the life continues. I've met animals who are chomping at the bit. One of my most recent clients, the animal said to her, I'm ready to come back to you right now. I'm just waiting for you to put in your order. It's like, and I've had animals say to me, I wanted to have an experience of being in a body. I had it. I'm done now. I'm going to be her spirit animal from the other side. And it's like, okay, well, let's find out what does that relationship look like? How might it continue? But that's like another conversation to have. And it can be part of the transition and the planning process, as unglamorous and unfun as that sounds. The grief is easier. I lost my dad 9 months ago, and it is still hard for me every day that I don't get to hug him, and I don't get to look in his eyes, and I don't get to hear him laugh at all the funny, stupid stuff that we used to talk about and movie lines and all that. But I feel him every day in spirit, and there's a quality to that I never had while his body was alive. And so I want to put that out there for those of you who are listening or talking, listening or watching, and maybe thinking, okay, after their body dies, the grief is just going to hit me like a wall. And I'm just going to because I've also talked with clients who are still flattened by a passing that happened a year ago and are, really literally ignoring all the signs that their animal is trying to reach out back across the veil and reestablish the connection and have that continued conversation. Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of those signs, because you've been doing this work a lot longer than I have. And I mean, I would love to hear.
I would love to share that with you. Shannon, you touched on a really important point. One of the reasons I ask people to start to let go of their grief because it feels like it puts up a shield between them and their animals. it almost feels physical, that you just you can't let them, they can't get through it.
Yeah.
It's because you're just mourning something that has already happened and you're not in the now. So just for those who are still grieving after a long period of time, I invite you to take another thought about how to make this more livable. And one of the ways is to invite your animal to come in and say, okay, I'm ready. So what you got for me? They find coming into dreams is very, very easy because we're already in that space of listening. And people say, well, I don't remember my dreams. I say, if your animal comes to you in your dream, you will remember, and it will feel like the real thing. You'll just know you are in presence of the animal. So you might hear them in your house. There are so many stories. Gail saw her dog's tail out the side of her eye as it seemed like her dog walked from one part of the house to the other, and then she would feel her coming in to their office, and you might hear a meow, you might hear nails on the hardwood floor. I got to tell some more. My mother-in-law would feel her cat jump up on the bed and sleep with her. The best one lately that I've heard is Harry, a little corgi. And when he told me this, I'm thinking, oh, I'm making this up, but I got to say it. I said, he's going to mess with the water bowl and he's going to make a mess out of it. And his person said, oh, he used to do that all the time. He was such a messy drinker. And she confirmed she could rule out the other pups in the house, that it wasn't them, and that he had actually played with the water bowl. So you can ask them to do something and see if that it'll come through. I mean, they're listening. They want you to know that they're okay and they love you. They're just looking for a chance to connect.
And that is key, to ask. I mean, those of us who are, because it can't, I mean, I went through that with my first cockatiel, Jacob, before Pearl came into my life, and I was just devastated, and I was so gridlocked, and I didn't have anyone in my life at that time. This was 26 years ago, Neil. Mwah. Sorry, those of you who are listening, that was me giving my Pearl yet another, probably his 150th belly kiss of the afternoon, because, and death, it's just, so it makes us feel, which is a great place to really connect in with our animals. But consider, have you asked your animal? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to see you. I'd love to feel your presence. Have you opened yourself up to that? Because you said something really key, Maribeth, about you're grieving something that's already happened. It's like you're kind of, and that needs to be grieved, but it's like that's in the past, and it's like, what's happening right now? Is there perhaps a continuation, and you're simply not paying attention? That's not a judgment. It's, part of the grief process is, in fact, the first stage, if you believe in linear stages and those sorts of things, is denial. So you could very well be like, I mean, it's not uncommon, to just be like, okay, I'm sure they're coming back soon, or just, when something is that painful, we do tend to just shut it down for a little while, because we really feel like it's going to kill us. And we're very programmed to avoid death for survival, as well as first world modern cutting edge technology reasons. And so it's like, okay, fine, we can be in denial for a little while until it feels bearable. But the moment it does, this is time to reopen the connection. and consider whether your animal might like to come back with you. You know, maybe you don't believe in reincarnation. Sorry about that. Maybe you don't believe in reincarnation, but maybe it's not about believing, because beliefs tend to inform things that we've never actually had an experience of, or we've never allowed ourselves to have an experience. That we believe in something when there's nothing in our world that indicates data one way or the other, whether it's intellectual or sensory. And so maybe it's not about belief. Maybe it's about going, okay, fine, I don't believe in it, but I'm open to changing that belief by having a direct experience. Let me just check. Maybe I'll ask, you know, Shannon or Maribeth to talk to my animal. And because you know what, if you're listening, let's be honest, if you're listening to a podcast called Let's Talk to Animals, we're talking about Reiki, we're talking about energy work, we're talking about pets in transition, we're talking about the rainbow bridge and life after death. Maybe there's a part of you, like a tiny little part, that's like, this reincarnation thing, it's at least mentally interesting, you know? I mean, maybe you're a little bit open to it, right? And so maybe it's just about, you know, talking with that animal and seeing maybe they'd like to come back to you. And this is a cool one where I've had clients tell me that they knew that the animal they have now is the spirit come back, because there's a little weird mannerism that they do, or there's like a little habit that they have, even if it's a different breed, even if it's a different species, you know, and you see that, and it's like, so wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could be reunited with this animal that you've been, and I mean, again, all honor to it, because it's like, it's painful. Like, this is part of being human, is the sucky, painful parts, you know, but what if that's just a moment and you could then have a continuation with that animal? And when your brain starts going and it says, oh, but you know, I don't want to adopt a puppy. And how is it possible that that's a whole nother podcast. Let me just say it's possible, and we can help you with that. And we can have those conversations with your animal, and they'll work it out from the spirit side. And that, again, that's a whole other conversation. It's very interesting. Yeah. It's very fun, but it starts with the playful possibility that my connection with my beloved is not over. It's in transition. It's evolving. And there are ways that I can actively participate in the experience that my animal is having that I'm missing out on right now, because I'm kind of stuck in my grief, and I either don't know that help is available, I don't know that support is available, or I'm just like, I'm not asking for it. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. There you go. Maribeth, you're just such a delight. You're such a delight and such a light in this world. And the work that you do, I feel, is very unique, very intentional, and very, very just deeply empathic and genuine. And I just feel like every pet parent should be so lucky to have somebody to literally walk with them and be a part of this process and be a friend at a time. I mean, I can't think of any time in life when we need friends more.
Oh, this is true.
You know,
I know what you're talking about. I feel like I'm able to feel the grief and yet still walk with them, because I'm so, my intention is so to help people and their animals get through it in a way that they do have peace. They have some fond memories. They have maybe some laughs about what that last thing that they wanted to do, or however, that we bring some joy, strangely enough, but
strangely enough
through it.
I know.
Something comes through that makes us feel more spiritually connected and more like life is, even in these dark times, in dark moments, there's still something lovely happening between us and our animals. How great is that?
Well, and it's the dark that really accentuates the bright, and it brings out the bright. And some of us, that's what we need. I've always been pretty good at, using that opposition. It hasn't always made my life easy, but it, sometimes we need that opposition, like, oh, that's everything or everyone I don't want. And that is really, sometimes even when we come to our dreams in life, or even picking our next animal, it's like, well, I don't want this, I don't want that, and I don't want that. Well, what's left? What I do want. And that is that's a genuine pathway
Yeah.
to walking into the next phase of your life. And so on that note, what I would like to share, and I think I did it once at the beginning of this podcast, but I'm going to do it again now, and just in case I didn't, you can find Maribeth Decker at sacredgrove.com. By the time you're hearing or watching this, her new book will be out, or newly revised and expanded book, Peace and Passing, on Amazon. Your Perfect Endings and Transitions program is available. You can find me at Animal Love Languages. You can also find Maribeth's first podcast with me, where she shares her story if you want to learn more. And just keep in mind that, not only can you schedule private sessions and group mentoring with either one of us, but there's also lots of free tools that will help you just get acquainted with everything that we're talking about today, and so much more. Maribeth, thank you again for being a part, for coming back and donating your time yet again. And Pearl and I are very grateful for your good company and your wisdom about these really challenging times in life. These are important conversations to have, and thank you for showing up to have it with me.
I'm so glad to do this. Shannon, you ask and speak of the most important things about the beauty of animal communication, what's available for us who do it, and for those people that we work with. Thank you so much for bringing this to the world. It's just wonderful.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, we will be back next week with another amazing podcast guest. Please be sure to bookmark, like, support, give us a 50-star review, or 50 feathers if you're avian or listening or watching. And let us know any questions you have, any topics you want us to cover that are things you've been wondering about, or want to learn more about. And we appreciate your support very much, and we'll see you next week. Okay. Bye for now.